material requirements fairly easily. This is something to be expected, considering the game would be very boring if you couldn't play without 20 other people. Cooperation is only useful in reducing the time needed to produce the materials to satisfy those requirements. Take, for example, food. Ignoring the fact that
Panda, 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 panda. I got broads in Atlanta. Just to lean the family.
Lack of food won't kill you outside of hard mode, food is exceptionally easy to get by either making a small farm or by simply hunting some of the many passive mobs that spawn.
Manual Hassan raid. Yeah, we're learning about materialism using Minecraft. We're learning about materialism in Minecraft.
In abundance, mobs which will not defend themselves. Food security.
Kind of funny given Notch's politics. Well, this isn't about like Minecraft's beginning. It's about a server, right?
Security for each individual player can be reached by each individual player working on their own. This means the only reason players would work together to provide food security is if they collectively just wanted to, or if there was an external expectation or rule to do so. Next, let's move on to housing. Housing is something that is required to protect players from hostile mobs. Basic housing can be built with any block and can be constructed within the first 30 seconds of spawning. The only reason players would work together to provide housing is if they wanted to build something more, well, pleasing to the eye at a faster rate than working alone. Or if they just all wanted to, take you and your friends teaming up to build a town, for example, or if there was an external expectation or rule to do so. This goes on with nearly everything you would need or want to do in Minecraft. I call this the individualist production loop, referring to how each individual player can gather all of the resources and craft, build, or grow everything necessary to meet their material needs and complete their wants or goals. The option to work together is there, but it's not required. Because of this, players who want to go around murdering everyone can do so. These aspiring murderers can work by themselves to provide themselves housing, food, weapons, armor, etc. Hence the need to require cooperation and to weed out those who choose to go it on their own. From this analysis, the solution to creating a naturally developing Minecraft society is clear. Make it extremely hard or impossible for each individual player to produce their material needs by themselves. If they cannot by themselves provide food security for themselves, or housing for themselves, or weapons or armor for themselves, then these conditions, their material conditions, make it impossible for players to go off on their own and become antisocial axe-wielding maniacs. And moreover, it makes it extremely important for players to cooperate to meet their material needs, leading to the formation of social relations of production in the process. I call this the social production loop in Minecraft, where players need to work together in a coordinated way to gather the resources and craft, build, or grow their material requirements. This is why Minecraft civilizations fail to create their own unique societies, and typically build off of preconceived notions that players bring from real life, such as we need to build a democracy, or empire, or kingdom, or dictatorship, instead of a social organization.
Is this a video about Minecraft, Carter, or is this a trick? It's about Minecraft servers and how to organize the best Minecraft server. They were talking about in the beginning. They were talking about how YouTubers have tried to run like experiments to like build society in Minecraft things. Like how would people go? Like how would people organize? Like what ends up happening? Why do servers like resort to anarchy and stuff? And he was like, here's the only way to avoid that, and just describes materialism. Yeah. That's it. He's like, how do you avoid like axe murderers or people who are greedy, or how do you lessen their impact? And then he goes to describe like a distribution of not wealth, but of society and tasks that make no one have an upper hand on each other. Right? Even if it maybe is something that is not as valuable or contributing to society, it is an essential part. Right? It's about, yeah, collective organization. Yeah. So.
Coordinated way to
mutual aid? No, it's literally, he describes socialism. Here, we'll go back. People were just joining, so they probably missed this. He's talking about like an individualist organization of the of a Minecraft server, and then he talks about a collectivist organization. It's pretty cool.
Friends teaming up to build a town, for example, or if there was an external expectation or rule to do so. This goes on with nearly everything you would need or want to do in Minecraft. I call this the individualist production loop, referring to how each individual player can gather all of the resources and craft, build, or grow everything necessary to meet their material needs and complete their wants or goals. The option to work together is there, but it's not required. Because of this, players who want to go around murdering everyone can do so. These aspiring murderers can work by themselves to provide themselves housing, food, weapons, armor, etc. Hence the need to require cooperation and to weed out those who choose to go it on their own. From this analysis, the solution to creating a naturally developing Minecraft society is clear. Make it extremely hard or impossible for each individual player to produce their material needs by themselves. If they cannot by themselves provide food security for themselves, or housing for themselves, or weapons or armor for themselves, then these conditions, their material conditions, make it impossible for players to go off on their own and become antisocial axe-wielding maniacs. And moreover, it makes it extremely important for players to cooperate to meet their material needs, leading to the formation of social relations of production in the process. I call this the social production loop in Minecraft, where players need to work together in a coordinated way to gather the resources and craft, build, or grow their material requirements. This is why Minecraft civilizations fail to create their own unique societies, and typically build off of preconceived notions that players bring from real life, such as we need to build a democracy, or empire, or kingdom, or dictatorship, instead of a social organization evolving from their existing conditions.
Is this like a theory head, or did you just recreate the wheel that is socialism? I think this is just a YouTuber, a Minecraft YouTuber who got deep into the sociology rabbit hole, and you follow it back far enough and you find out that the only way that like society functions well, it's like in, what's that game? Victoria or whatever? Tropicana, whatever, where just being a communist or a socialist always just makes you the most overpowered. Right?
In real life, it's extremely difficult to provide for yourself all of your material needs by yourself, and therefore why humans necessarily form social relations of production to be able to produce in sufficient quantities the material requirements of life. This is why social anxiety is rooted in our DNA, because our ancestors who were scared of being shunned or exiled by their tribe would be biologically incentivized to cooperate and to form these relations to avoid being left to fend for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally why we have a thing called, sociopathy, which is like, being a sociopath is like seen as a negative, like a bad thing. If you are a sociopath, it's like a bad thing. Like we recognize that because like we are incredibly social creatures that rely on one another.
Themselves. Of course, we don't need to simulate anxiety in Minecraft. We just need to provide the conditions which gave rise to it. Here are some general recommendations. 1. Increase the required usage of food or decrease the yield of food sources. 2. Increase the cost of housing or increase the drawbacks of lack of housing. 3. Increase the cost of tools, weapons, and armor. 4. Increase the material requirements for players, such as adding thirst, tiredness, etc. 5. Introduce a player reproduction system where 2 players on the server with enough food could create a new player slot to allow previously dead or new players into the server.
That's kinda cool.
In following these general recommendations, I would advise not to simply increase how much food players need or decrease yields directly in loot drops and harvesting, as it can be annoying to players who are accustomed to needing a certain amount of food and yielding a certain amount from drops and harvests. I would recommend a more creative approach, such as progressive health drop as you get hungrier, or livestock needing a constant supply of food to stay alive and not just to reproduce. The same goes for all other modifications. Don't just increase how much iron goes into an iron pickaxe, for example. Make it actually harder to make a pickaxe by requiring ore to be maybe smelted and then immediately forged using special expensive utility blocks, something like that. In Magic Gum's most recent video, he addressed some of these points. He actually introduced a thirst system, he introduced natural disasters, and environmental change. Unfortunately, the only consequential change in material requirements was during the Ice Age, when crops and livestock froze to death, making food hard to come by. Outside rules and expectations were especially strong during the late stages when special resources were introduced to incentivize trade and expansion. Because of the hesitancy in curtailing the individualist production loop, groups of players still had to be externally steered and directed into to organizing into civilizations and expanding to other civilizations similar to the first experiment. I propose that a social production loop implemented in a civilization experiment in Minecraft through the use of mods would produce a much more complex, spontaneous, and interesting society with much more complex, spontaneous, and interesting politics, economics, and therefore storytelling. Without the guardrails and
Individualist Ayn Rand types are delusional to the point that what seems like mental illness. It's so funny when a libertarian homesteader types believe that they are doing everything on their own when that's just not possible. Yeah. They think like the trailer or the cabin that they put on their property, they cut down all the trees, they manufactured all the wood, or the solar panels they put on their house to be off grid. It's like, you didn't make that. That required someone else. You don't live this lifestyle that you think you do. You know? The tools you're using, just going down to that, like, or they use, let's imagine that they do build their own home or they build their own water wheel. It's like the tools you're using you didn't make. You know, you know, it would take your whole life and you probably wouldn't get that much done. If you wanted to literally do everything from scratch, let's say you started at 18, you moved out, you went out into the woods and you had like a little piece of property and you got to start chopping trees. Well, you also got to get food. Well, you also got to make the tools to chop trees. Right? Tell that to John Plant. The thing with John Plant is he hasn't done that much, right?
guidelines made by staff members and event organizers steering the development of civilizations, the viewer...
Even if you got did it from scratch, you got the idea from something? No, but that's not the point. The point is that, like, the labor that you can't do everything on your own. Humans can't. We are social creatures. Every single aspect of us requires someone else. Even the most hermit, removed from society people use tools made by other people. Does that make sense? Or rely on some aspect of other people, right? We are literally just built like that. We aren't our system. We need to cook food, shit like that. Yeah. I know a YouTuber that did this. It's awesome to watch his homestead grow. Primitive skills on YouTube.
Will feel that anything can happen, and that anything that does happen can be analyzed with much greater depth than in current experiments. For a simple example of how it can be more interesting for the viewer, compare games with an in-game economy that are set up by developers versus a game such as EVE Online that has an economy completely run by players and regulated by natural laws and is so interesting and has so much depth that multiple videos totaling tens of millions of views are being made to analyze it. Just
I mean, he
imagine...
couldn't have done it because he's uploading to YouTube. I just want to say that, Charlie. Like, he goes to town, he goes somewhere to charge it to have creature comforts to get a break, but like in the real world, if you were just like out in the middle of nowhere alone, you'd probably die relatively quick. Right? Alone is like the closest thing I can think, but they have tools made by other people, you know? I think some people would survive, like, but it would not be it would be just surviving. It wouldn't be, you know, it
the
wouldn't
ripple
be,
effects of even one large-scale experiment using a social production loop could generate, especially if participants record and upload their own POV to tell their own story. In terms of how the experiment should be structured, I recommend the event style that Magic Gun pioneered instead of a full-time server, which would require a claim system to prevent griefing and theft when players are offline. Such systems could prevent emergent scenarios, such as in-game property laws, and could ruin both the players' and the viewers' immersion. Having a set period of time, most likely 2 to 3 hours, a few days a week, or even 1 day a week, can let players rest easy after sessions, knowing that everything will be as they left it. This downtime in between sessions can also give space to role-playing elements, as players can plan and make decisions outside of the game. The combination of the social production loop and the event structure can give rise to truly unique forms of social organization. The different ways that groups of players organize and coordinate their production could be limitless. Another interesting question I want to have answered is, assuming that we start with many groups of players separated by distance, all developing their own societies, how will those societies develop over time? Will one form of social organization conquer the rest? What power structures will arise, if any? With a renewed emphasis on meeting material needs, will players be as focused on abstract goals as they were in past experiments? We can only really speculate until such an experiment is done, but hey, if this video gets a decent amount of support, I may just get together with some modders myself. If you'd be interested in a Minecraft civilization...
He literally wants to make All right, this is a good video. We watched this because we saw a short about this. We were watching some video. All right, we got a little more Epstein stuff.
This is a montage of the changing stories on Jeffrey Epstein. Enjoy.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein.
That island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Who killed Jeffrey Epstein?
This doesn't look right. It doesn't look like a suicide.
You know, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that. His plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense.
There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less...
Are you guys still talking about this Epstein guy? Hey, what are we still on? It's been like 4 years.
No, because, you know, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's
sample that.
phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least...
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there, because that was a weird situation, and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera.
I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking ring.
Absolutely, Senator. Child trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
Release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
Cash is just evil, bizarro Zoran. I agree. Cash Patel is bizarro Zoran. I see it. I see it. I see it.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
A lot of people are wondering, because you said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk, is when can we see them and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released. There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded, because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices?
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well, we'll
along
look for
with his
that.
Co-defendant.
Absolutely, and he had help. That's for sure.
He sure did.
But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden.
That is true.
And
listen, I think a big thing here is someone's either going to leak it or they have been lying the whole time, and it's just it's a saber rattling, right? It's saber rattling to each side to signal like we can sink you. They don't actually know what the fuck they're looking at. They know that like it's weak, it's weak, and yeah. That's what I think. I think it just